Well, obviously, we're trying to crown portal winners, and it's all based on perception, right? Like, we don't know what those guys are going to look like in uniform. We don't know what certain players are going to be able to do. We haven't seen a spring practice to kind of pick apart what could look like in spring games. But I think that, when you just take a look at what LSU has done, and I mentioned this today, Brian Kelly, yes, start the hashtag, get it trending. This will be the end point right here. Brian Kelly last spring did the interview with WAFB in Baton Rouge and said, "We will not be in the business of buying players." Well, Will, let me tell you something. LSU has been in the business of buying some players here through the early winter portal cycle. As
Just think
soon as the
about
portal
who said
officially opened
that.
up, Will, what'd you say?
Think about who said that. Brian Kelly. Let's consider Brian Kelly's track record and think about who said that.
Well, I know some people actually. I will be honest with you. I do know some people who are inside that building that actually do tune in this show. So I'm not going to just throw it out there. I'm not going to ruin the relationships. But you can respect that. That's how I make my money.
I can respect that. You don't want to get executed. I get it.
But in all seriousness, you look at what they needed, and on paper, Will, they've gone out and gotten what they needed. And we've talked about this. It's a defense that was absolutely better than 2023, still has a lot left to be desired. They go out and they get some guys on the interior offensive line. Will, we talked about it all year. It kind of felt like it was an overrated group in what they had. They go out and get Josh Thompson and Braylon Moore, two guys from Northwestern and Virginia Tech, respectively. More guys that can put their hand on the ground and run you over so they can get that run game going to help out Garrett Nussmeier. They go get a guy that I was very high on coming into the season in Patrick Payton. Out of Florida State, who was a guy that they had to pay a pretty penny to get. His first year without having Braden Fisk and Jared Verse wasn't a good year and for anybody in Tallahassee. But the hope is LSU was able to take two guys this past year. They were able to turn both Braden Swinson and Savion Jones into NFL draft picks. Could Peyton with 1 year realize that potential? And then obviously, the big one, and I'll talk about this team in a second. You look at the receiving core, Barian Brown, Destin Hill, but Nick Anderson. I mean, LSU, we talked about, they couldn't replace this past year. If they could not replace not having Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors. And look, few teams could. I mean, we've seen those two guys have done in the NFL. But they go out and get guys to where it's like, you know what? They've had some production. Nick Anderson being a very big 6'4", 215-pound receiver from Oklahoma who had a spectacular freshman campaign 2 years ago. They filled needs. Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech. They filled needs. And when look, I created at the end of the season, I said, hey, here's the big board. Like, this is the positions you have to go get. And you got to get multiple there. Well, look, people were complaining, Will, after that interview that Kelly had last year about not spending money, and it was a concern. I told you it was a concern for me about this team in 2024. Well, at the very least, and I saw someone say it earlier, I want to go back to it. Brian Kelly can't afford another year like he had this year. He's going to go down swinging. And at the very least, I think LSU fans have to be excited about that. They've got to be happy about that. Now, whether it pans out and results in a playoff appearance, we're not going to know till we get on the field, next fall. But I think for the very least, this is a team who has won the portal in terms of the mindset you have to have, and they needed to have after a season that was disappointing in every single aspect. So you get your quarterback who – we'll have a conversation later in the spring about it. Might, in my opinion, could close to being the most talented returning quarterback in the SEC in Nussmeier. You got to help them out, and hopefully they did that. So that's my winner, Will. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. You can move on to your winner if you'd like. But I think LSU has won just with the fact that they have checked out nearly every single box that they needed in terms of needs on this roster for the 2025 season.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had two things about well, I guess really three things, three players. I think getting Michael Van Buren to come in and be the number 2 quarterback is a coup, and is almost to Kelly's point of we're not in the business of buying players, because he is a guy who definitely had better offers to go elsewhere.
Yes.
That's for sure. So to be able to get him, it shows, and that he to me shows why it's so important, why recruiting is still so important, and being able to establish relationships with players because you never know what's going to happen, and not everybody's just chasing the largest check. So, kind of restores some faith in me in college football to know that there's at least one guy out there not just chasing the biggest bag. A guy that you didn't mention that I think is probably going to have a big year, especially with Whit Weeks unfortunately getting injured in the bowl game, maybe affecting the start of his season. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
Jack Pyburn from Florida. He's a guy I like a lot.
He's a dude.
I like him a lot. He's a dude. As Gavin would say, he's got dog. Got dog in him. He's good. And some guys that maybe aren't coming back. A big one in that secondary, Sage Ryan. I think that makes you a winner. But like Gavin said, where'd it go? Where'd he go? Here it is. If they get Keontae Scott, anything they have done goes out the window.
He is, folks. Will, he is 15 minutes away from where I'm sitting right now. So that's all I got to say.
No, Keontae Scott, decent player.
Well, and the way that LSU would utilize him is not the way Auburn would have to utilize him. That's absolutely the big difference. But
absolutely.
Yes.
So, but Sage Ryan was, maybe we'll have to see how Ole Miss uses him. But maybe to your point, maybe LSU wasn't using him correctly. But he was picked on a lot in the secondary, and for him to find somewhere else to go play, I think is a big win for LSU.
There's another safety that also won't be on the roster next year that I think Ralph is especially excited.
I was going to save that one for Ralph. Unfortunately, he's not on tonight to talk about it.
LSU's my big winner.